Stories from around the corner.
And around the country.
You're listening to All the Best.
Proudly supported by the Art Gallery of New South Wales.
This week, we explore stories from the coastline. But before we get into this week's stories, I want to acknowledge the land and sea I'm recording from is stolen and Gadigal land, and pay my respect to Gadigal elders past and present, and also recognise that the area where FBI radio is situated, Redfern, has long been a place of storytelling, strength, resistance and resilience for First Nations communities. I love the beach. It's one of my favourite places to go to. In fact, recording this episode for you, I've still got Tamarama Beach salt on my skin and a little crunch in my hair. It's honestly crazy to think that some of our beloved places for exercise, socialising or tranquility are really just loose piles of sand. Have you ever been to your favourite beach and noticed that a rock face or a sand dune looks different? This first story explains how erosion isn't just about loss, but about shifts and transformation, and how this change makes a beach into a resilient landscape that sustains itself.
Most of us have probably heard the term coastal erosion. It's the way waves, currents, tides and wind eat away at beaches and coastlines over time. The thing about coastal erosion, or shoreline retreat, is that land isn't lost, it just moves. And in some places, it even grows. This growth is called coastal accretion, but we'll come back to that. Beaches are constantly changing. That's why we love them. The waves wash away our footprints and the wind creates new patterns in the sand, only for everything to change again moments later. The Victorian seaside town of Inverloch is located 143 kilometres southeast of Melbourne, on Bunurong country. Since 2012, Inverloch's foreshore has retreated by some 70 metres. This is a lot of change, even for a beach in constant flux. Coastal erosion has seen homes, roads, and the local surf club come within metres of being inundated by the sea. Glenn Arnold is the president of the local Surf Life Saving Club. In the 14 years he's lived at Inverloch, he's seen the coastline change firsthand.
You know, we're sitting in the surf club at the moment overlooking the ocean. Well, when I first came here, you couldn't see the ocean from the surf club. The dunes were higher, and obviously we were a lot further back from the actual water's edge. So quite dramatic in that time, yeah, because now we are literally right on water's edge, as you can see.
According to the Climate Systems Hub, the Inverloch Surf Beach has faced an unprecedented rate of erosion since 2010. And since 2013, nearly half of all dune vegetation has been lost along the surf beach.
You know, there are those in town who go, let nature be nature. There's those in town that can see that the damage that it's causing, the economic damage that it's causing, the fear that it's causing people whose houses will be directly affected if you know, we don't do something about it. So I think there's mixed emotion. There's a lot of frustration about it. I guess inevitable that we're going to see changes to our coastline, but this one's pretty dramatic.
Coastal erosion is proving a tricky issue for the community, local council and state government. No one's quite sure of the best way to deal with the issue yet. And the concern isn't just for the surf club.
If the club has to move, it has to move. I think the bigger issue here is the protecting of the 500 plus homes behind the surf club. There's massive infrastructure in the ground around us as well. There's the main line of telecommunications and internet down to Tassie right next to the club here. There's a lot here. You know, we've got young families living in there, first-time mortgage holders in there. We've got, you know, retirees that have got all their funds in their property, and it's probably their last, you know, place of residence.
There's currently an effort being made to reduce the impact on the surf beach. Huge sandbags have been used to stabilise the dunes. There's also replenishment work underway. Sand is dredged from further down the beach, then placed in eroded areas to brace against the next big swell.
Again, it's not a permanent solution, but it should buy a few more years. In addition to the sand being put back on the beach, then we also have another organisation that will then plant dune resilient, beach resilient plants to help try and foster their continued development after they've been dredged.
While most eyes have been trained on Inverloch's shrinking surf beach and the possible threats to homes, livelihoods and infrastructure, just around the corner at Point Norman, another beach has been growing. So what does a growing beach sound like? David Kennedy is a professor of coastal geomorphology at the University of Melbourne. He's been monitoring changes in the Victorian coastline for 15 years. He says the scale of growth of the beach at Point Norman is unusual.
So what we're seeing at Point Norman with the growth is the sand that was in front of the surf club is now there. But it's also connected to what's happening within the entrance to Anderson's Inlet. That's that whole sediment system.
What was once a skinny stretch of sand is now the size of a football field. This is because of an invisible exchange happening beneath the waves.
It's a normal coastal dynamic of sand moves from one spot to another, and that's what we've got to think of beaches, is beaches are loose piles of sand. So they move, and that's why we have beaches. As an example like this in Australia, where we've had a sudden retreat and a very large lot of accretion, it's definitely unique in Victoria, and it is unusual on a national scale. Yeah, that sand spit is definitely new. If we go back to 2010, the channel that goes into Anderson's Inlet used to be hard up on the side of Point Norman, and there was erosion issues there. The council had put riprap, they put rocks on the base of it, and they were really worried about the cliffs collapsing. But when that channel shifted, so it moved more east, that sand spit just built all the way up, and it was a completely new environment for that area.
Walking around Point Norman, the air is full of bird calls and buzzing insects. These days, the sand spit is full of grasses and tea trees. There are pelicans bobbing in the lagoon and dragonflies hovering overhead. This new ecosystem is a legacy of the surf beach. From its displaced sand, this environment has grown.
I think it is beneficial in that space, and it's that area, it's in terms of, it's a different scale. So the plants that are moved in, and this is a common thing along a lot of the coast, they're exotic species and tend to colonise quicker, but they're still grasses. So you'll get the ecosystem of the grasses there. So definitely great environment, and the lagoon that was behind became quite a sort of a hotspot for wading birds.
Not land lost, but land transformed. The Eyre Creek Lagoon began to form at Point Norman in 2014. Its formation is a result of the build-up of sand which came from the eroding surf beach. Warwick Mears is a team leader for the Friends of the Hooded Plover group, based along the coast around Inverloch. He says he and his team have recorded 80 species of birds in and around the Eyre Creek Lagoon at Point Norman. The new water source has encouraged species to the beach which might not have been present before.
We're concentrating mainly on water birds. There's often a large colony of coots in there. These are the more common ones: coots, chestnut and grey teal, hoary-headed grebes, quite common in there. Swans, we often get a lot of swans in there. And the more rarer, unusual species, we've had plumed whistling ducks in there, which are not very common for this part of the world.
As the sandspit and dunes at Point Norman have grown, native and non-native plants have colonised the beach, increasing vegetation cover. For species like the red-capped plover, this has proven to be an advantage.
Well, the red-capped plover are much more adaptable than the wooded plovers. We've actually got 2 nests down there at the moment. Yeah, the lagoon is a real benefit to them. When we're talking about the the southern end of the lagoon. This area facing the beach, benefits from them because both the nests are under vegetation at the moment, so they're hidden away. They're quite difficult to find, and they like a bit. As I said, they like a bit of cover to nest in.
It's a rule of physics that energy can't be created or destroyed, only transformed. The same goes for our landscapes.
So really what we're looking at with erosion, and people always sort of think about as erosion is the loss of sand. And really what it is, it's the sand hasn't gone anywhere, it's just shifted elsewhere on the coastline.
Coastal erosion is threatening homes and infrastructure at Yirrkala. It's serious and distressing. And it's an issue we'll likely see more of as ocean levels continue to rise.
I think we can look after nature, work with it, enhance it, have the best of both worlds, but respectfully and carefully. Let's not abuse it. I think this is an example here, right? We don't have to be defeated by the fact that we've been slammed by some weather events and the tides have changed. There's ways that we can work around that. Look after it, work with it, and work together with it, I think.
The beach at Point Norman gives us an insight into the resilience of our landscapes. With the sand washed away from one beach, another has grown, supporting species and life. Land not lost, just transformed.
You're listening to All the Best, proudly sponsored by the Art Gallery of New South Wales on FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Gabriella Acaria. That story was produced by Joanna. The supervising producer was Craig Garrett. Special thanks to Tito Ambyo, one of Joanna's lecturers at RMIT, who helped shape the story focus for this piece early on. For this next story from our 2022 archive, we migrate to Australia's northern coast, Arnhem Land. Bridget Chappell interviews Yolngu cultural leader Timmy Burarrwanga of Yirrkala about his community's connection to Makassan sailors from Sulawesi, Indonesia, connected through the sea cucumber, or trepung trade, that began in the early 1700s. We'd like to acknowledge Timmy got awarded the 2026 Nhulunbuy Citizen of the Year Award just 2 weeks ago.
The root of this history lies in bariba, or sea cucumber, also known as trepang, which drew visitors known in Yolngu as mangathara to northern Australia to harvest for sale on the international market, specifically the Chinese market. Makassans arrived each year with the monsoon and stayed for months, working alongside Yolngu in their shared industry. But this history encompasses much more than trade. It represents the arrival of Islam on this continent long before Christianity and a history of mutual exchange and agency. It also poses a powerful counterpoint to the colonial pearl and pearl shell trade notorious for its enslavement of Indigenous people across northern Australia.
Where I come from, Boka, its name comes from Makassan.
What does Bawaka mean in Makassan?
Unknown heaven.
I was lucky to interview Yolngu cultural leader Timmy Burarrwanga in Yirrkala to learn about this history. Timmy's own family history is interwoven with the Makassans. His elders have passed down these histories through the generations. Here he sings part of the songline Kapala Bawaka that joins Arnhem Land to Makassar.
It's a so long story. It's like our songlines right across from the Arnhem Land to the Indonesia to Makassar.
What's your family connection to the Makassans?
My grandmothers and grandfathers tell me stories about Makassan. We have very strong connections, and it's written by thousands of years. Like it's been used, sung in the song lines and in the arts, and also in the language. There's lots of words, there's thousands of words of Makassan's languages right across in Arnhem Land. We have adopted our languages between Makassar and Yolngu people in thousands of years, like rupiah. Rupiah is the money.
The impact of Makassaris on the language of Yolngu Mata is indeed profound. Yolngu words of Makassan origin appear everywhere. Verbs like work, buy, build, count, and dive. Nouns like medicine, salt, dog, and radiance. Adjectives like greedy, naked, sour, and fragrant. Some of the words heralded the arrival of new concepts, like balanda, which means white person. Some represent new additions to something, including extensive vocabulary relating to boats and sailing. Some words took their place as synonyms alongside words already used in Yolngu Mata, like manangan, the Yolngu Mata word for thief, now joined by baluka, Makassaris for robber. The adoption of loanwords for such everyday concepts that Yolngu Mata already has its own words for points to just how interwoven the lives were of the people speaking these languages. Makassans themselves knew Arnhem Land as Marage, and further west along the coast, the area colonially known as the Kimberley was called Kayu Jawa. All along these coastlines, we find other impacts of the Makassans, like the Wurwurwoi stone arrangement they built at Yirrkala, and other things.
They left what we call jambang. Jambang is a tamarind tree. And in the coastlines in Arnhem Land, the tamarind trees are some sort of a special plant that planted by the Makassans right across. And it is saying that Makassan people were here in the thousands of years. And that's like unique to Aboriginal people or Yolngu people right across. You know, they came through Western Australia and Cape York, and they went all over the places.
Do you still collect trepang now?
We don't collect trepang now, but tribes now painting trepangs. We also respect the animal. You know, it's a sea cucumber, and we call it taripa. We respect it, and we also a lot of people that put it in the art and paint it, and the stories be told by the elders. They were collecting a lot of things like pearls and shells, because they see Yolngu people were collecting it, and because of Makassan saw that, and then they started collecting. So there was a knowledge between Makassan people and Yolngu people.
But as Timmy says, it wasn't the Makassans' only harvest. Pearl and pearl shell fetched good prices in foreign markets as well. This adjacent industry poses a comparison between Makassan pearling and the colonial pearling exploits that would follow. When Prime Minister Scott Morrison claimed recently that slavery never existed here, it prompted the online sharing of confronting photos of the reality of slavery in this country, many of them taken from archives of the colonial pearling industry of the top end. Slavery may have been abolished in the British Empire on paper, but it was a mainstay of the colonial pearl industry. It included both Indigenous Australians and also Makassan and other Southeast Asian people kidnapped from their own vessels and forced to work in the colonial parallels of their own industries.
After that, of this collecting, they used to sit around and, sing songs while they're cooking, sing songs about when they harvesting. And today, we always sing that songs, especially the land, the sea, the creatures inside the sea. So it's a very unique and very important for Yolngu people.
How did the Makassans practice religion when they came to Yolngu country?
There were some of the religions adopted by the Makassan, because Makassans were the Muslims. There were something that was shared in those times, and because of those times, Yolngu people didn't know understanding about what the religion was, But there was ceremonies and a law, and song lines and dance, and then there was a show that was adopted by Makassans. It was a exchange knowledge. They gave us knives or iki, steels that Yolngu people right across were using those steels. Very sacred and very value to the tribes. Dancing with the flags and knives, all those things that happening today comes from the Makassans.
The Makassans established semi-permanent settlements across northern Australia, building houses to live in, smoke houses to cure trepang in, and mosques to pray in. Imams accompanied Makassan fleets, and Islamic knowledge was exchanged with Yolngu knowledge. The Yolngu-Makassan history represents a rich side of intersecting knowledge systems. It encompasses the knowledge productions of Persian and Arab geographers who mapped Australia's northern coastlines in the 9th and 10th centuries. Muhammad al-Khwarizmi, also known as the inventor of algebra, mapped Cape York Peninsula, the Gulf of Carpentaria, and Arnhem Land in the year 820. In its margins, he has written, "This map shows a large area of the land surrounded by dark, stormy seas. You don't know its beginning from its end." The Makassans and their boats are the subject of Indigenous rock art across northern Australia, from the Kimberley to Queensland, with contemporary Indigenous artists also celebrating the history on canvas and bark. Songs in the Yolngu Manakai tradition are sung about the Makassans and other Muslim visitors from across the Arafura Sea. Contemporary Yolngu musicians sing about it too, such as Yunupingu's Japana, Sunset Dreaming, and Soft Sand's Jiliwiri. In 1997, the huge production of Trepang, an Indigenous opera, was performed in both Makassar and Darwin to packed audiences. The cast of over 100 Yolngu and Indonesian performers explored the history through the allegory of first contact, in this case between a Yolngu girl and a Makassan sailor. Indonesian academics and religious organisations have published extensively on the topic, and Makassarese folk songs tell of these epic voyages to the Marage. The history is known and celebrated too in the sea cucumber's final destination, China, where it was the subject of a 2011 exhibition at the Capitol Museum in Beijing. Meanwhile, in 2019, Muslims from Western Sydney produced the feature-length documentary Before 1770 about the history, commissioning and sailing a purpose-made Makassan boat from Sulawesi to Arnhem Land. The strangest thing about this incredible history is that despite the wealth of knowledge and resources out there, it remains so little known and so uncelebrated in settler Australia. The mainstream Australian history of Islam here is, of course, so different. The anti-asylum seeker policies that have defined our era since John Howard's terms as Prime Minister, the invasions and continued occupations of Iraq and Afghanistan, and the vilification of Australia's Muslim communities by right-wing politicians and their supporters. In 1988, Australia celebrated its so-called bicentenary, representing 200 years since the landing of the First Fleet. The reenactment of the landing in Sydney was met by over 40,000 protesters. Meanwhile, up north, a traditional Makassan perahu boat named Hati Marge landed in Arnhem Land, reenacting its own history. Its captain was Mas Jord Mohayang, whose late father had been the last surviving crewman on a Trepang voyage in 1906. So what caused the downturn in this ancient relationship? One of the first enforcements of modern Australian border control. In 1884, the first customs tax was imposed on Trepang vessels. Fees and duties were raised each year until finally achieving their goal in 1906. The Muslim Cameleers of Central Australia, without whom so much of the colony would have remained impassable, were undergoing their own parallel version of bureaucratic violence. It could be read as Australia's first instance of modern border control, and the first chapter in its long colonial history of Islamophobia. The first official incarnation of the White Australia policy in 1901 saw the departure of hundreds of Indonesians living and working here. Recent decades have seen new possibilities for Yolngu and Makassans to reconnect, with collaborations such as the Trepang opera, which was developed in Makassar. It represented another aspect of the older histories, of some Yolngu travelling back to Makassar at the end of the Trepang season, some of them staying there and marrying into Makassan families.
Yeah, it was. Yes, there was a lot of people went back to Makassar, and so my grandmother, she went and stayed there for many of years, and had kids and a family. There was exchange marriages in those times. It was sort of, culture, and in this culture was the relationship between Yolngu and Makassan was really strong. It's like a family, people were living sharing food, working together. It was that economy, bringing that new economy. And also the family structures. We always talk about that every day, like when we're sitting around campfires. We always talk about Makassans. We always talk about this history of the family. So for us, it's really powerful. So we need to adopt this education and to give this to non-Aboriginal people, or in the curriculum that talks about the history, about first connections with the Makassans. And we need to educate that, because that story is deep knowledge, and we want to celebrate, just like people that in this country celebrate, January the 25th. We want to celebrate something that was special to Aboriginal people and to the first people that connected to Aboriginal people. And I think that's a very unique and appropriate way of doing it. This is what I always think about it. All the people that believe that they were here and there was, peace.
This project was made on the unceded lands of the Yolngu people and of the Lache Lache and Nyeri Nyeri people. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Sovereignty was never ceded.
You're listening to All the Best on FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Gabriella Accaria. That story was produced by Bridget Chappell. The supervising producer was Mel Chun. We've had our first audio club for the year, and our first audio challenge is firsts. This challenge is for audio makers of all levels. You can check the show notes for this episode on allthebestradio.com for more details. And if you want to keep up with events at All the Best, or just want to get a sneaky peek, visit us at allthebestradio.substack.com, or you can find the link in the show notes. And if you love audio stories, then keep listening to All the Best for unique stories from independent audio makers from so-called Sydney and around the country. Definitely catch our live radio broadcast on Sundays at 9:30am on FBI Radio 94.5. We also release a brand new episode every Tuesday at 4pm on allthebestradio.com, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Follow us now so you never miss an episode. All the Best is made at FBI Radio on Gadigal land, in association with SYN and 3RRR on Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung and Boon Wurrung lands, and 8CCC on Arrente and Warramungu lands. The All the Best executive producer is Mel Bakewell. Katerina Fraga Matos is our events and partnerships coordinator. Kwame Slusher is our production manager. Patrick McKenzie is our community coordinator. And a special shout out to all the volunteers who helped to make All the Best possible. Shining Bird composed our theme music, and Annie Hamilton designed the artwork. We're heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. And we're made possible by the Art Gallery of New South Wales and the Community Broadcasting Foundation. You can find our full archive of almost 700 episodes at allthebestradio.com. I'm Gabriella Accaria. Thanks for listening.